You're listening to the Bourbon Nerdz Podcast, Episode 10, a Bourbon Nerdz Distillery exclusive, featuring Hochatown Distilling Company. Part 2, featuring owner and bourbon pioneer, Blue McDaniel of the Hochatown Distilling Company. All right, so we're sitting here. We got a Bourbon Nerd Spotlight. We got Blue. We're sitting next to Blue McDaniel.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah. Good. Welcome. Welcome to Hochatown Distilling, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man. This is good. We're sipping on this OSU
Loyal and True.
Yeah,
this is
the man next to me is wearing an OSU shirt, so I thought nothing better than to get some of the Loyal and True out to sip on.
Yeah, and this is Loyal and True, very delicious now. It's very sweet, corn, just well balanced. This is pretty good. This is the first time I've had this.
So talk about the this labeling that you guys have done with these sports teams and stuff.
Well, we have our Heritage Series that we do, which is our brand with the Hochatown Distilling, and we've had a couple of sports teams, through their NILs, contact us, and we've worked with them to create and design some labels and some brands for them.
Awesome, cool. So talk about the history of how you got started and where you got to this point.
Well, Hochatown Distilling was formed in 2015, so we're just last weekend was our 10th anniversary.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
This is actually our 10th episode. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go on, what? Your what?
All right, this is our 10th episode.
Oh, yeah, all right. And we formed this in January of 2015. Now, we didn't do our first distillations, though, until our bourbon distillation until September of 16. So we had to go through the licensing process. We had to figure it out. My brother Mitch and I started working on this project, and what we knew enough to know that we had to work behind our learning curve on this, because we were not distillers. We're science guys. Mitch was a chemistry major from Southeastern.
Okay.
And then worked 30 years in the industry as a chemist. I've got a degree in chemical engineering, University of Arkansas. So we knew the science and could figure out the science, and we like to drink bourbon. And we decided that we were both at a age where we weren't young guys doing it. We were really kind of post career guys that had the opportunity through a set of unfortunate and fortunate that turned out to be fortunate circumstances to wind up here together and decide that we were gonna make bourbon whiskey. And a good thing we didn't know then what we know now, or what I know now, because we were on the front end of this. It seemed like, all right, that's a task, we can handle it. But as you get through it, dealing with not only just getting the license and learning how to make the whiskey, but then just really starting to deal with the business end of it and how the industry's set up to favor the big, large scale out-of-state producers versus in-state manufacturers. Because when we started in 15, you couldn't even sample somebody at your place.
Really?
They couldn't come in and buy a drink to try it. You couldn't even sample them. And they couldn't buy a bottle.
That's crazy.
Oklahoma was the 50th state to allow that to happen. And it took us 6 years to get that accomplished. So, Oklahoma has a history of prohibition and a prohibition mindset. And when we were a territory, and this was formed as the Indian Territory, prohibition was put in place as law of the land. And then in 1907, become a state. That was really starting to get to the peak of the temperance movement. The temperance movement started as a post-Civil War movement and gained momentum. And then you wound up with these states coming into the Union in the late 1890s, early 1900s, Oklahoma, Utah, some of these states. Yeah. That's why you see kind of some really weird alcohol laws in those states.
Yeah, so Utah has some crazy ones. I think just recently, and they're starting to get a little bit more liberal, I guess I don't know if the right word. You couldn't even pour alcohol in front of someone. You had to do it behind a curtain, so just stuff like that.
Wow. Didn't know that.
One of the other ones I thought was interesting was Jack Daniels. I guess they, where the county they produce is a dry county, so they can't even sell where they make the whiskey.
I've heard that.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing too. Like ever since they've started, they haven't been able to sell there. So.
That's what I've heard, and so
crazy laws.
I know.
Have you guys ran into anything crazy like that, where you're law wise or otherwise?
Oh gosh, we're going to get into some of the stuff that's going on, and so just kind of jumping back into where we were at, Oklahoma being a temperance movement state, and when Oklahoma Constitution was put in 1907 and then ratified, the alcohol was put into prohibition, and then the United States went into prohibition with the 18th Amendment, and when it was all through the process, I think 21 when it hit, and then the 21st Amendment, which brought the United States out of prohibition. But what people don't realize is that Oklahoma was in prohibition before the 18th Amendment. When the 21st Amendment came out and was repealed, Oklahoma was still in prohibition, and Oklahoma was in prohibition until 1959 on a vote by the people. And that vote was actually a petition initiative. An interesting note is that Will Rogers said that Oklahomans will never repeal prohibition as long as they can stagger to the polls.
That's a good saying. I like
so in
that.
1959, it was repealed. But you also got to realize when it was repealed that a lot of special interests were behind it, and when they set it up, just as what had happened when the slate was cleaned with the 18th Amendment and the 21st Amendment, when it come back out of prohibition, it was a clean slate in the states that did not have prohibition. So the laws that were set up at the protectionism of typically the distributors, and so. That's kind of what you see in Oklahoma when you start looking. We're a very distributor-dominated state when it comes to the laws. And just to give you an example, even though Prohibition was lifted in 1959, Hochatown Distilling was the first legal distillery to ever be formed and produce a product in the area of Oklahoma formerly known as the Indian Territory. And that didn't happen until 2015.
That's crazy.
So from 1959 until 2015, nothing happened.
That's nuts.
So that shows you, and that goes back to what we talked about earlier of not even being able to sample, and a young distillery in a world of distributors that are beholden to out-of-state multinational corporations. It makes it hard for people in state and distributors to produce products that feed into our state industry, and our alcohol laws have a huge influence on our tourism. And, think about the places you go where you can have tourism experiences and great tourism. And they've got good laws that allow people to go and enjoy some drinks. And when you go on vacation, you want to relax and have a good time. And and a lot of people, that involves having easy access, not difficult, but access under terms that protect under 21 from getting alcohol, but responsible adults should be able to have pretty easy access to alcohol and as part of their vacation and what they do, and places for people to go and spend money and have a good time. And Hochatown, we get a lot of that here. Yeah. And we've brought Oklahoma forward kicking and screaming, an example, weekend before last, we had to open 2 additional tours here. On Saturday, we run over 100 people through here doing tours, learning about Oklahoma whiskey and learning about what we do. Rod had 2 of the tours, and it was a holiday weekend for Martin Luther King weekend. Town was full. We opened up 2 more tours that I did. So we had over 100 people coming through here and experiencing tourism. And, those people loved it. They're going to tell their friends about it. They're going to tell their friends about the great experiences that they had in Hochatown, and they're going to want to come back up here. So what we do here is meets our own interest, but any good law and any good industry and agritourism should be, it benefits the industry in itself, which in turn benefits Oklahomans. So one of the things we got to look out and work toward is keeping the laws that are right and good. Yeah. But really rooting out the laws that provide protectionism that prevents Oklahomans from being able to prosper and grow their businesses and not hinder what we can do and how we can do it at the expense of protecting dollars that are going to flow out of the state.
Yep. So you guys have had to overcome quite a bit. I'm assuming being the first real recognized distillery. So you've kind of had to pioneer forward some of the change of those laws, some of the things that have had to require for you guys to survive, really.
And I'm going to say this humbly, that when Mitch and I came together to do this, it was a lifetime of experiences that we had in the professional world. Mitch being a chemist, even though I'm an engineer, I spent a lot of time working with large account management and sales, and being able to bring the skill sets of the manufacturing side of it and being able to work together in that, and then having the experience in large account sales management to move legislation forward and to work that, because that's really what it was selling a large account, getting that. Without that experience, it would be very difficult to do. It was difficult with both of us coming in with a lot of experience.
Yeah.
Because at least we were smart enough to know what we didn't know and then figure it out. Because when we started, Mitch was a chemist and I'm an engineer. We never really got into statutory law and state regulations and laws and how they work. And, we know how government works from basic civics, but we did not understand how the sausage is made from the lobbyist, from special interest. And one of the refreshing things that I found out as Mitch and I spent years going up to the Capitol. We started in 16 going up there, and we didn't really get anything done until 22. Now, we were two guys up there trying to figure out the system and learn how the system worked with a dream, with an idea.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of people that come up there with a dream and an idea talking, wanting to change laws that established distributors that have been 50, 60 years doing this, have the system set up the way that benefits them directly. And we were an outsider seen as a threat. So we had to build concession. You guys, one of the good things though is that we're tourism here, and we get a lot of legislators coming through here. You've seen pictures on the wall there. Representative Eddie Dempsey is our legislature here, and Eddie and my brother Mitch were college friends, and I've known Eddie since I'm a little younger than Eddie a little bit. But when I'd go to Durant and when I was in high school and stay with Mitch would be studying, and Eddie and them would pick me up and take me out and get me off into stuff that I probably didn't need to be doing at that age. But they weren't much older than me though, so it wasn't their fault.
Was Red Barn around that time?
Actually, it was.
Yeah, I think that's like a Durant classic, right?
Oh yeah, the corner bar. It's gone now.
Yeah.
But I was 17, 18 years old, and we were having a good time. And then we didn't come across each other again for 30 years with Eddie. And he walked in the door when he was working for now Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, and then we just kind of all hit where we left off on 30 years ago. And
that's great.
And then Eddie, the first 3 or 4 years we were going up there though, Eddie wasn't in place there. But we were speaking with people, and we were telling them about what our goal was, what we were dreaming, what we were wanting to do, and just trying to figure out the process. And then we were working our process here. We started, what people don't realize is, even though I told you earlier, we started in 2000 in September of 16 when we barreled our first barrel. We did not release a product until 19. So we made bourbon here, and there's 4 partners: our oldest brother Mark and Nathan Jewell, and then Mitch and myself. We're all equal partners. And we really just kind of looked at it as, this is a long-term savings account. I mean, you got to realize it's not cheap to build a factory and put up bourbon whiskey for 4 years. And we weren't selling alcohol. The laws were so conducive against us selling anything. It was tough. No one really cares if they can't try it, and you're kind of battling your head. But the good thing is that when we started this, we were running properties here, and we had other ways of making an income, and we really wanted to do this the right way from a discovery process. And the first product that we ever sold legally, we never sold anything illegally. A lot of people go, "Were y'all making this before?" And actually, the answer to that is no. We were not making it. We're science guys.
Yeah.
But we were not making it growing up or anything of that. The thing is, you got to have your building built before you can get a distiller's license, and you got to have a distiller's license before you can order a still. And it was everything was backwards about how you had to do it, And so we had to kind of work through that. And then people were like, "Oh, can you make a vodka?" Well, yeah, anybody can make a vodka. But we really wanted our first product to be bourbon, because that's what we set out to do, was make great bourbon. And we wanted our first product to be bourbon. So we never did a vodka till we did a bourbon. Our first bottle we ever sold was a bottle of bourbon, and to a wholesaler, I should say, and then went to a liquor store, and then the first bottle bought out of a liquor store. It was just down the road here, and it was bourbon. It's changed a lot, though, because when we started in Oklahoma doing this in 2016, when we got our license, we could have sourced. That's what everybody's doing now. A lot of them.
MGP.
I'm telling you,
Everybody's getting MGP.
I get so tired of seeing MGP on the. You strip the liquor store shelf of bourbons and strip the MGP brands off. There's going to be about a handful of. You're going to see the Jim Beams, the Jack Daniels, well, Jack Daniels, the Tennessee whiskey, but they got some bourbons. The Wild Turkeys, which is the Beam family products, and so they're the old Kentucky distilleries that you see. But if you were to do that, guess whose bottles would be right up there beside them?
Your guys.
Hochatown Distilling. Yeah. So
you got to be pretty proud of that. Again, you started with a dream. This is kind of how it's funny, and I'll go on tangent and get back to your story, but he wanted to start a podcast. I was talking about forever, and we were just like, "Hey, we should think about doing this." And I was like, "All right." I bought 2 pod mics. And that's how we started. We just started in November, but it's that dream. And we're sitting here talking to you about things I had no idea. You had to persevere. You had a dream with your brother and your partners, and it's come to light. We're sitting here drinking your OSU bourbon. I'm getting goosebumps right now.
Yeah, this is a dream come true for us. This is just a step in our early journey, and I'm really looking forward to going down the road. But we really appreciate this opportunity, because this is more than we ever expected to get.
Yeah, 100%.
Even early on.
You couldn't. This is the greatest thing ever to
well,
us.
y'all caught me at a good moment. I've been doing a lot of reflecting.
Yeah,
I have probably spent, just in the past 2 weeks, cumulatively 80 hours rereading statutes.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
that sounds fun.
And within the alcohol sector, and rereading the Constitution when it comes to that, going back and doing research on, Prohibition to 59 to 84 when it was liquor by the drink, to 2015, 16 when the craft modernization. And each time they were modernized for distributors, on premise, off premise. And distillers were pretty much left out. Give you an example. The only product that I know of in the state of Oklahoma that you cannot buy it directly from the manufacturer is spirits. By the Constitution and this was put in not in 1907, the best I can tell, and I haven't found the specific language. I've just found the ballot title, and I'm probably going to, when I go up to the Capitol, go find the specific language of how it was made. Because when Prohibition was lifted in 59, then there was an alcohol commission that was formed that made the recommendations, and the manufacturers had no voice because there was no manufacturing and really in the state then. There was no manufacturing. So the distributors had a voice at the table, and the on premise and off premise had a voice at the table. So everything was skewed heavily in their protection and advantage. And when you read into it, you can. You're going to see some issues coming up now with corporations wanting to come into Oklahoma on the packaged beverage sides, the LLCs. The Total Wine. There's a lawsuit now.
Yeah. I saw that they were trying to put a Total Wine in Oklahoma City.
And I've done so much studying lately. This is kind of what's on the forefront of my mind, and I want to blend in the history of Hochatown Distilling.
Yeah,
but the history of Hochatown Distilling is deeply intertwined with Oklahoma alcohol laws. There's a reason why from 1959 until 2015, in the eastern half of the state, there was never a distillery. Now, in the 90s, actually, there was legislation passed that reduced the distiller's license fee, and there was a distillery that went in called Old Russia Distillery in Oklahoma City, but it never really got off the ground. And and then there's been a few distilleries before us. The Wonder Folks people had a it was actually Prairie Wolf, and Guthrie had one, and then there's a Lead Slinger whiskey. It's in Moore. There's a couple there. So we were about the fourth or fifth one, but we were the first one in the eastern half of the state, the Indian Territory to do this. So when we were getting ready, as we were going through the process of creating our bourbon, and getting our equipment and then sourcing and learning and getting our mash bill figured out and working through that, we had the chance to talk to representatives, legislatures, and we were really shot down the first 4 or 5 years, and I can remember every year when Mitch and I had, this has got to be in 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, every year when we had exhausted our final opportunity to get anything done. And we were so naive. We didn't even know there was a bill filing deadlines, and some of those, but we started learning that, and we had plenty of time because we were bourbon and aging bourbon. And we always had a saying that, one thing you never want to do is get in a game of patience with a man who makes bourbon for a living.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done this when I was 30 because I didn't have the patience.
Yeah. No, 100%.
But we were both at an age where we knew that the experience and the journey and the process was going to be as enjoyable and as much as the end of the process, getting to that point. And when we started this, there were milestone moments along the way, getting our license, getting our distillery, delivery of our still, setting it up, doing our first distillation. And this whole time we always talked about what was going to be a big milestone moment for us would be among the many milestones, but what was kind of the trip that when we got to this point, then it was time to really move into the next phase. We were moving out of the production concept proof, and that was when we had a bottle in bond product. A bottle in bond bourbon, and that was really where our eyes were in 15 when we started this, was how do we get to that point, and how do we get to that point with enough scale to be able to take care of, a state of Oklahoma or our region, our area. It's one thing to make one barrel of bourbon. It's another thing to have enough scale so that you can make a small batch or a bottle in bond and still have enough product that you can meet a demand for that product in the state, and that demand, you have to temper it with the price of your product. We don't have the advantages of large scale of distilleries, but what we do have the advantages of are craft distilling. And when you know about craft distilling and understand craft distilling versus just someone that's bought a still and started making products, and you understand the biological process in depth. Mitch and I both, I sold anti-infectives for a pharmaceutical company, and that was a biological processes, knowing and understanding that. Mitch had not only in chemistry, but had to work as another part. A lot of biology was incorporated in his job. So we had to go from the biological processes of getting the grains, starches converted into sugars, and then getting the sugars then through the yeast converted into ethanol. And then once we had that process done and done with yields that were efficient enough to be a profitable enterprise, then we had to distill it. And you start getting into the distillation. You move out of these biological processes and you start moving over into thermodynamics, because that's what distillation is thermodynamics. And looking at vapor, liquid, azeotropes, and understanding the stills and how everything goes off. And that was where my skill sets came in of knowing, understanding these processes. And, it's really nothing more than a distillation column like you would do a petroleum with or anything else. It's vapor, liquid phase separation of a binary mixture. And so understanding those processes and then learning the guidelines of what makes bourbon, how's bourbon, what standards of identity does bourbon have to be made by, and then figuring out what we wanted our process to be. And we got lucky in some areas and discovered some things along the way, and we'll bend off on a tangent a little bit and talk about 2 or 3 of those things. And one of the things that we learned was that, your water's important, and everybody says their water, everybody talks about their water.
The best water.
but we are fortunate here that we do have great water.
Yes.
And,
absolutely.
And but it's not hard to have great water. We use RO water, and so we get the iron out of it, and so you got to have good water to start with, and so we have that. And then you got to have one of the things that we found out on the back end was that weather is extremely, extremely beneficial and important for making whiskey. And the wood that you use, bourbon has to be made in a new white oak barrel. And when we started, it was hard to find barrels because that was in 16, and all of the big liquor knew what was happening in the bourbon world, so they had gone up and bought all the raw materials, and so it was very difficult for us to find barrels. I mean, I used to say back when we started in 16, 17, if I was doing this again, I wouldn't be making whiskey; I'd be making barrels.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm glad I didn't. But now that the wine industry's downturned, as far as the barrel aged wine, moving over into the RTDs and some of that, there's becoming some barrels on the market that the price has come down.
Yeah.
But Mitch got online and we found a barrel manufacturer that was starting up in Higbee, Missouri, Barrel 53. They're no longer that place burned a couple of years ago, but we started buying our barrels from there, and I found out through a barrel manufacturer. He only makes small barrels, Gibbs Brothers Cooperage over in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and we buy little barrels here that we sell out of the gift shop and stuff. But Mr. Gibbs over there is a 3rd generation Cooper, and come to find out, he gets his wood out of that same region in north central Missouri, and just being able to visit with him over the years and learn some things about how important the wood is, because when you start getting into bourbon and you start looking at that barrel stave, they cut those on the cant, so they expose the grain. You don't want it to running with the grain. That can do warping and stuff, but mainly you cut across the grain. It's kind of like fine furniture. You cut across the grain to prevent the warping, but it also opens up the grain. And that's where, when the spirits go into the barrel, that's where they go into the grain. That's where they're extracting the wood sugars and the tannins. Yep. So the how far north your barrel comes from, affects your grain density, which affects the extraction rates that you get the tannins and the wood sugars out of the barrel, because you've got to put the whiskey in there as a white liquor, and it takes oxidation reactions to start breaking those down and mellow out that corn whiskey. But you also, when you extract out wood sugars and tannins out of the barrel, the flavoring components that bourbon's known for, you have to break those down and oxidize those out. And being craft distillers like we are, and understanding where we make our cuts between our heads, our hearts, and our tails, we can cut our tail, and we do batch distillation, not continuous distillation. And batch distillation allows us to make our cuts by hand and to understand what's going on, not allow a lot of tailings in. You need a certain amount in there for mouthfeel, but a lot of that can add age and years onto your process. Now, if I'm mass producing bourbon, it's much cheaper to put them in barns and let them rest than it is to worry about doing batch distillation versus continuous distillation. Batch distillation, where you can get your cuts and get your tail cuts and get custom cuts on it and understand what you're doing there. And if you understand the process and the science about what goes into it and where these different compounds are coming off based on your pot still temperature, we run a 200-gallon pot still right now. We're wanting to get a bigger one, and we're working on that, but we've got to go into a 6-plate column. So it's a hybrid still that we run.
Yeah.
But we don't use any automation on it. We do it all. We do all of our cuts by hand, and we really are true craft distillers because our hand is in every part of the process as far as the cuts and the labeling and getting everything ready. So when we were moving forward through this process and learning about the laws and learning about the wood that you use, one of the things, and really didn't learn this till later, was the climate. And what we wound up with and have here in Southeast Oklahoma is a climate that gives us three things that really make aging whiskey beneficial, important. They're important. Yeah. Now, you can get by with two of the three, but very, very rarely do you get all three. And what you get is heat, your average annual temperature. We're Southern Oklahoma. It's hot. But hot's good because hot drives the rate of oxidation reactions, which break down and mellow out and get your product smoother and ready to drink. But the problem with that is when you have heat, you typically have an arid climate, which low humidity. So your average annual humidity has a direct impact on how much angel share loss you get out of your barrel.
Yeah.
Are you going to get 4% a year? Kentucky, I think, gets about 3% a year. The barrel gets 5% right off the top. Kentucky, they say, is about 3.5% a year. But you get down like in South Texas or places where they have heat, but it's dry. They're getting 12, 13, 15%. That's why you see them doing smaller barrels. And you kind of find that some of those Texas bourbons had a little bit oakier because they're minimizing the barrel surface area to volume ratio to get their extractions, but not lose a lot of angel share. Because when you start losing 12, 13, 14, 15% of your juice every year, after 4 years, you've lost enough that makes the economics of the barrel not necessarily competitive on the open market. So what we found out here was that we had this area where we're sitting right here in Hochatown. If you were to look on a historical maps of average annual rainfall, this is the wettest place in the state of Oklahoma. And if you look around, you see pine trees. And I want you guys, when you head out, to start watching. And where the pine trees stop over, around Antlers and kind of over there, and as you're going up the Indian Nation, you'll see where the pine trees stop. 15 miles, 20 miles north of Antlers there. So when you start getting pine trees, is where you start getting where there's enough moisture to support the growth of pine. And pine trees require a lot of water, so we got that southern climate here where we get that moisture. So your average ambient humidity controls the amount of angel share loss you get through your barrel. And then the third part is the 4 seasons. And I don't know that I've ever heard anybody term it, but where you have the heating and the cooling and you have places that are hot and they stay hot, and you have places that are cold and stay cold, and you might go from hot to cold. But one thing about here is that we do truly have 4 unique seasons here. And what you got to realize is that I call it, for lack of a better term, mechanical action. The mechanical action of forcing the juice in the barrel when it's hot, and then extracting it out when it's cold, and then forcing it back into the barrel when it's hot, extracting it back out when it's cold. That's why you see those vibrant, rich colors in our bourbons at 3 years aging.
Yeah.
And then you take the combination of getting good cuts on your, through craft on your heads, hearts, and tails, a climate like we have, and then and understanding what the barrel's going to bring to your product, and then we do cross blending and vatting throughout the way. We'll run about 10 distillations into a tank, and then we fill a barrel out of it. And then we put that barrel in storage, and then when we get ready to do our small batches, we're pulling through your bourbon, but I'll pull bourbon over a range of that 3-year age. And so you may wind up in one of our, and then we'll pull those bourbons out over those 3 years of age. And it's a process of how we're always leaving a little bit. And so some reaches over into 4 years, and then we use our 4-year bourbons and then pulling some of those and then letting some of them get over into 5 years. And so I'm sitting on a few barrels of some 7-8 year old bourbon right now.
Now you're getting me excited.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just thinking whenever
and it's not one barrel.
Yeah, multiple.
There's enough to have a steady little stream of this stuff coming out.
You're saving the good juice.
When he brought this out, I was like, man, that is super dark.
Yeah, it's so dark.
That right there, though, if you look at it, that when we do a barrel harvest, when we're getting ready to make our small batches and do a barreling, we'll pull out of the barrels and we taste all of them and run them through a process where we grade them. And we're looking for single barrel, if any are a single barrel, we grade some of them out. Yeah. And then what's left over on that is I'll just dump it into a container there and keep it as a reference sample to use to as a reference sample is really what it is. And so when you get that barrel or when you get that small batch from us, you're looking at, there's probably anywhere from 30 to 50 different distillations in that.
That's interesting.
Product.
Yeah.
So it's that cross blending of your distillate off your still, aging it, and then cross vatting. Vatting is when you mix bourbons of the same mash bill in the same age, made in the same season. Mm-hmm. The cross vatting of bringing those products together is how you get consistency in your bourbon and your flavor profile. You don't necessarily wind up with flavor profile creep,
Yeah.
And as we aged into that, it took a couple of years to age into that, where we were doing that, where I had a range of 3-year-old barrels that I could pull from and some 4-year-olds. And what you're drinking now is a blend of some of our 3-year vatted bourbon and some of our 4-year vatted bourbon.
Doesn't taste 3 or 4 year. It doesn't taste much to me. And again, I think it goes back to what you were talking about, the different seasons that you guys experience. That no way does this taste like a 3 or 4 year bourbon. To me, it would be a 6 to 8.
Mm-hmm. Well, that comes with the corn we use, getting the cuts right. It comes back to understanding the science, and understanding what you're trying to accomplish here, and then using Mother Nature to your advantage. And like I said, we just got flat out lucky on a couple of things. We got lucky in that we have a climate here that is outstanding for aging bourbon in.
Yeah.
And it's surprising that you guys were like the ones who kind of landed here with the limestone water and all that kind of stuff.
Well, we don't have limestone water here. Our mountains our mountains, well, we got a little secret on that. Okay. But our water here is a lot of spring-fed water and runoff. And, you look at these mountains here, there is some limestone in the area, but where we're at here, a lot of it is spring-fed and runoff. And these mountains here are old mountains. These Coimishas are like the second oldest range in the United States. And so what you see here are just the worn down granite nubs of mountains.
Yeah. I think I would really like to understand where your guys are headed. Like, I think you've told us what separates you guys from some of the big dogs and even other smaller distilleries. You talked about some of the aging process, the chemical, biological processes. Where is Hochatown headed? I mean, you're having exponential growth.
Well, I don't know about exponential growth. People are liking our brand. You got to understand right now the whole bourbon market, the whole whiskey market's kind of downturned. Yeah. And the world has gotten tired of people buying MGP, putting in an oak barrel or putting in a wine barrel.
Yeah.
And selling it for $200 a bottle. All right, the taters have finally run out of money.
That's why the Kentucky Owls and stuff are kind of starting to go out.
Falling off.
What people don't realize is that if you take the distilleries, and we talked about how we started and made it, and one of the things that's unique about Hochatown Distilling is that there's 4,500 craft distilleries now in the country. But how many of them did it the way we did it? Meaning, we couldn't scale fast like the people that buy the sourced products. And, they're the next greatest thing because we weren't insiders, We weren't insiders in the Kentucky bourbon industry or the bourbon scene or had the contacts with the distributors. And, if you got those contacts, then, you can do that. But what we did was created a product that's unique for us and here. And in the wine world, they call it your terroir. That's who you are. That's your essence of who you are. And I think a lot of the sourced products that you see, those distilleries are missing that.
Yeah.
They're trying to make their own, but you're not really getting who they are.
Yeah.
And I think that the bourbon and I'm happy to see that as the bourbon drinker now is starting to get more matured in their tasting profiles, that they're starting to come and watch for places and companies like Hochatown Distilling, because what you're drinking here is who we are and what we are. This is not going to change. Yeah. This is what we are.
Yeah.
Like it or love it.
Good.
Don't like it, but appreciate it.
Absolutely.
This is what we are. And this is what we're going to be as we expand. So the question was, where are we going? Well, I would like to see us be able to get a new still and break some new investment in and figure that part out to where we can start increasing our production and working through that process. You know, our proof of concept is down. We've shown that we can make a good product.
Yeah.
And then start moving into the next phase of that proof of concept of getting out and getting into a bigger and more robust production.
Yeah.
But that comes with a lot of challenges because your distributors pigeonhole you. They, in a downturned market, all of the big brands are on them about you gotta sell this, and we get lost in the shuffle.
Yep.
And so we struggle with that and fight with that, and I think a lot of people will see our age statement on our bourbon, because if you're under 4 years old, you got to have an age statement on there. If you're under 2 years old, you got to put how many months it was aged. We don't do anything like that, but we've talked about how we get a good mature tasting bourbon by the processes that we use, and we're not fooling Mother Nature. We're not trying to gimmick Mother Nature, but we are just giving Mother Nature a hand. We're helping Mother Nature, and that was our philosophy on it, is we're not going to try and fool anything.
Yeah.
We're going to go with what is original. And this area in southeast Oklahoma, when we started this, it was the moonshine capital of Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. We talked earlier about Prohibition, and when Prohibition came into place, that was kind of one of the interesting things. But what people don't understand is down here in southeast Oklahoma is, we talk about this on a YouTube video that our tourism place did. You can find it on there. But what happened was, because this area was in Prohibition in southeast Oklahoma, McCurtain County, there was already a network set up of moving liquor throughout the region in Oklahoma. Illegal liquor.
Yeah, of course.
For sure.
All right.
Illegal.
But you got to think about when Prohibition hit, the network was already set up. And what you also have to realize is that Hot Springs, Arkansas there was no Vegas at the time.
Yeah.
So all of the gangsters, the mobsters out of New York and all that, they kind of come up with the Prohibition during the Prohibition era.
Yeah, like Al Capone.
All those. So Hot Springs has got a rich history in that.
Oh, yeah.
And our baseball teams all went to spring training in Hot Springs.
Oh yeah, there's actually some wine that we brought back, and one was like spring training, one was Al Capone. And
there's a spot in a parking lot over there where home plate was, where Babe Ruth hit home runs out of.
That's crazy.
That's insane.
And so it's a neat town with a rich history. But what happened was this area here was ready. And so when Prohibition hit, the distribution network was already set up, the underground distribution network. So this area just started cranking out moonshine and liquor and sending it to Hot Springs, where it was getting on the trains and headed to the Chicago and all
New York.
all of our cities were undergoing, in northern cities, Chicago, Cleveland, all those were undergoing rapid transformation at the time of industrialization.
Yeah.
So people were moving there, and they wanted liquor, and they wanted to keep everything going.
Yeah.
And so this area prospered and boomed during that time. And it became known then as the moonshine capital of Oklahoma, because it was bringing a lot of prosperity into this area. And what the old moonshiners back then were, a lot of times they were making sugar shine. They were mass producing, but they were also using the grains here and making their own shine. And a lot of people see the white liquor that is put out of here, at that time, but that was being sent to the markets up north. They were aging their liquor here and getting the barrels and aging their liquor and that's why this area became known as the moonshine capital of Oklahoma, because of the mass production that they were doing. But it also became known for having good liquor, and it goes back to that climate that we were talking about, the water and the climate. And so they were letting it set in barrels and aging it for their own use. And so that's why this area became known and became famous for bootlegging and moonshining. And it didn't hurt that we were, 180 miles away from the city, and you had mountains protecting this area, and nobody wanted to come in here. And our southern border was Texas, and our eastern border was Arkansas, so the jurisdictions didn't come in here. And this area was former outlaw country, no man's land, and outlaws came over here. So it was just a combination of a lot of things that happened here that created an environment for making whiskey and getting a reputation for making good whiskey. Yeah. And so we didn't realize all that till we started making it. A lot of times you don't realize something until you start working with it with your hands and getting in. But we quickly realized that. One of the things, and we were talking about water and calcium, and you take Kentucky, that's limestone filtered water. It puts a lot of calcium in there. That's why it raises great racehorses. It creates bone structure, and bone structure can put muscle. That's why Kentucky's known for racehorses. Yeah, it's also good for bourbon. So Mitch and I, this is brilliance of Mitch being the chemist. We were like, how can we bring that in? And they did a sour mash technique. And, back when they were doing this in the 1800s, they didn't understand necessarily what the sour mash meant. All they knew it was a sour mash from like when they would do breads and sour mash breads. But what they do is take the backset after the stillage, after they had distilled it, take some of that and put it back into the next mash when they were converting the starches into sugars and all. And they didn't know what it did, but it made it better. And from a science perspective on it, what did it do? Well, what it did was it helped the pH and buffer the pH so that the yeast could have a little nicer little home, more comfortable home to do their job in. Yep. But it was also adding some nutrients back in that the yeast liked. So Mitch set out, and part of our process is we use citric acid to adjust the pH, but we also bring some nutrients of calcium back into it, and some magnesium and some of the products that yeast like, and we jokingly refer to that as our Kentucky water. So we take the benefits that Kentucky water gets. We use a RO water, but then we add back in some of the nutrients in our mashing process. We don't use a sour mash; we use a sweet mash, and so, but we're adding the nutrients back in and getting the benefits of what a sweet mash is, and that was some of the brilliance of Mitch right there, being a chemist.
It's kind of like when they say the New York water is like the best water to make pizza or something, and so
exactly. Water has a huge influence on what you're doing and what you're making. I'm not sure why New York water would have a great impact.
It's the rats. The rats.
Is it the rat? It's got to be something, filtered through rat feces.
Yeah, there's something about that rat feces.
There's public sewage.
There's actually like a coffee that they make with feces, isn't there?
Yeah, there is in the mountains.
Yeah,
I forgot what it's called.
There's a civet cat.
Yeah, it's a civet cat
that will eat the bean, and then through the process of digestion, it ferments in the gut, and then they poop it out and they gather that up and make a coffee.
It's supposed to be the best coffee in the world.
Crazy.
Yeah,
and I love coffee.
Yeah,
like bourbon, coffee.
Could you imagine a coffee liqueur made with Hochatown Distilling bourbon? And we developed a coffee liqueur here. We never put it into production. That's wonderful.
Is it?
Okay. Oh my God! Yes, it's unbelievable.
Okay,
and we're working on that.
Yeah,
we got a little sidetracked with some of these NIL deals and stuff like that. But we're starting to move back over into some of that
is
stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah.
If this is anything, what you guys are going to be doing, I'm extremely excited for. What you guys have to
we're looking at some unique things with that, and one thing about Hochatown Distilling, we're always looking to help fellow Oklahomans and bring it about, and
that's great.
And through the process of how you label and all. We're looking at doing a barrel proof, but we also want to bring in some of the great Oklahoma institutions in as partners on that. And we've already been making contacts with some of them, and we may focus each quarter release. We'll bring in one of those institutions, and we're not talking about, we're talking about public servants and doing something to help raise awareness for what they're doing and contribute and be able to contribute back and create some products and roll through a different product. It's our barrel proof, but each quarter we'll be focusing on a different Oklahoma institution that's great and working and partnering with them.
Hey, Bourbon Nerds are Oklahomans.
I know, but you know, and
no, I think that's amazing because we want to get to that point where we can start giving back to the community.
Well, one of the products that we do is a Soldier's Wish vodka.
Yeah.
And Soldier's Wish Spear Point vodka. It's made to the standard of our vodka. Our vodka's outstanding.
Dude, there's no question.
You get
make some of the best vodka I've
pigeonholed.
ever had.
You get pigeonholed because distributors have bigger companies like out of Texas that hold them to it. But if you're an Oklahoman and you're not drinking Spear Point vodka, then shame on you.
It's amazing.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Like it didn't even, not just because, I mean, it's Oklahoma, obviously. We want to push that. You guys make some of the best vodka I've ever had.
Yeah. Well, it's 7 times distilled through our whiskey stills. Seven.
7 minutes.
Yeah. Pot still with 6 plate column, 7 still.
That's crazy.
And it's also charcoal chill filtered. We take it and we chill it down to 25 degrees Fahrenheit and run it through a filtration process. Well, see, when you chill when you've redistilled it, you've chilled, and then when you start chilling it, what you do is you reduce the solvating capacity of the ethanol to hold dissolved fats, oils that come out as solids when you cool them down. Much like iced tea, when you make sweet tea, you heat it up, you put the water and sugar, you put the sugar in, dissolve it, and then when you got a cloudy iced tea, it's cloudy because that sugar is coming out of solution. You got a saturated solution it's coming out of. Well, when we start cooling down the ethanol, some of those fats and oils start coming out of solution. Then we use a micron filter to filter those out at a particular size, and then we proof it down to 80 proof after that, and then we present it to you to drink. We got a philosophy around here about vodka. Vodka's got 2 things that it has to do to be successful. It has to proof up whatever you're mixing it with.
Yeah.
All right.
That's fair.
Water, nice cordials. You know, you take the Drambuis, you take, cocktails and drinks, and vodka's in there to proof it up. But then the second and most important thing that it has to do, it's got to get out of the way.
Yeah.
Who wants to take these expensive cordials and put a vodka in there that when you taste it, and if you've got a little bit of a trained palate,
rubbing alcohol,
you're going to catch that rubbing alcohol flavor.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm telling you, I could, if it's not Spear Point in there, I can taste it and tell you.
Can I make an announcement real quick?
Yes, sir.
Tito's, I'm putting you on notice. Their vodka's coming for you guys. So
yeah, I'm sure they're so big. They're so big. I wish they would. I wish they would. Yeah, all right. I wish they would.
I'm curious as a chemist and an engineer. You said you were an engineer, right?
Yes.
So how did you land on your mash bill? Because I know there's probably a lot of science.
Great question. All right, so. During that process from 15 until we started distilling in 19, we talked about working behind our learning curve, and Mitch and I were trying to figure out what our mash bill would be. And during that process, Mitch and I would sit down pretty much every afternoon about 4 o'clock, and we would have a bourbon together, and we would discuss, hey, what did we get accomplished, what are we working on, and just have a bourbon and trying that. And it got to where we would go find new bourbons. We weren't drinking our bourbon, we weren't making it, wasn't ready. We'd go find bourbons and bring them in. People would bring stuff to us, and we would do a test on it, and then we would start trying to guess what the mash bill was. And we got pretty darn good at it. Meaning, we could tell within just a couple of points of the percentages of what the grains were on the mash bill,
that's awesome.
just by tasting it and understanding it. And we wanted our mash bill. We wanted our bourbon to have a very strong sense of balance to it.
Yeah.
Meaning, the spiciness on the front end, or the caramel and the sugars and the honey on the front end, the spiciness on the back end, and that's what rye brings into it. Oh, sure. But we wanted an underlying level of sweetness to it. That's what the corn. That's what our mash bill's 80% corn.
Yeah, and you can tell it's very corn forward.
So that gives you a good baseline of sweetness, and then you got to have malted barley in there, just because, and it's just part of it. Malted barley. there's enzymes in malted barley. That it has high enzymatic coefficient, so it helps in the process of converting the starches into sugars.
Yeah.
And it also gives some of just the notes that barley gives. That's really a kind of a old heritage, traditional come over from, and it's an honor to our Scottish roots of whiskey making, bringing it over.
Yeah.
We're doing the single malts like that, but it also, because it has a high enzymatic activity coefficient. And then we had to make a choice. Do we want wheat or rye? Wheat softens up and lets the corn to express itself more, but all the great bourbons are rye bourbons.
I'm a rye guy, so I love rye.
I've gotten into some wheat, and
I love wheated bourbons.
I actually asked Rod if you guys had ever, or if you're considering ever, trying some stuff with the wheat, like a 4-grain or anything like that.
Probably not.
No. Okay.
First thing is, because we are limited on the size of our distillery, we can chase a lot of things, but we decided early on that we're going to make one product and like mash bill and get really good at that.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a lot of, our production capacity is limited, and we want to be able to focus people toward our brand, our flavor, our terroir, for lack of a better term, in the wine world, and get people understanding what we are, who we are, and enjoying that, and not trying to be anything and everything to everybody. I'd love to do I love wheated bourbons, but we also like rye bourbons, and that's who we are. That's what we are. So back to your question on the mash bill, what percentages did we want to use and everything? Well, we chose 80% on our corn, not 79, not 81, because if you look at corn whiskey and the standard of corn whiskey,
70%?
80%.
Is it?
80%. Corn whiskey, the standard of identity.
Oh, corn whiskey. Okay,
corn whiskey, which we make we make a corn whiskey here that we sell here. You can find it throughout the state, but no one really stocks it. Corn whiskey's not a big demand. It's corn whiskey lovers love corn whiskey, and we have a great corn whiskey. You can buy our corn whiskey, and corn whiskey has a standard of identity just like bourbon does. It has to be 80% corn, distilled under 160 proof, like a whiskey. One of the unique things about it is you're looking at that corn whiskey right there.
Yeah.
It's clear. It's clear. Corn whiskey is the only whiskey that can be labeled as whiskey by the TTB without ever having been aged in an oak barrel.
Interesting.
It says moonshine. And so is this very similar to like what a moonshine?
Moonshine is a marketing thing on there.
Yeah. Okay.
Most moonshines that you buy are people buy grain neutral spirit and call it moonshine. There's no standard of identity. They're just trying to get you to buy it. That has corn whiskey on it. All right. So
interesting.
I'll use this as a moment to segue over into something that's so in 22.
Now take your time.
In 22, we were getting ready to bring out our bottle and bond,
Which is a great product you guys have.
Yeah. And we had already barreled our first barrel, which was a 4-year-old 100 proof. It was actually a bottle and bond. We didn't name it a bottle and bond, but it's a small batch 100 proof. We've never sold any of it. I've got it barreled. We've only donated it for charitable causes.
That's
barrel
awesome.
Number 1. It's the first legal barrel of bourbon ever made in the state of Oklahoma. The barrel sits out there. So 7 years in, we're getting ready to do this, and Mitch has a heart attack and passes away.
Very sorry to hear
I'm
that.
sorry to hear about that.
So, trying to figure out what kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely.
to continue to carry this forward. And we're going on 3 years. It's been a process, a challenging process. But one of the things I wanted to do was to continue to move forward in the fall of 22 and to get our bottle and bond out. So Mitch had always taken care of the cola label registrations and all that. He had done that part of it. And that's our certificate of label authority and all. And so the oldest brother, Mark, had always wanted to do a moonshine. And somewhere in about 17, 18, when we'd started distilling, Mitch had run these labels through the cola process, developed a label, kind of run it through, really more just to learn how this process worked.
Yeah, just kind of like
and to
actually
get ready.
do it.
Yeah,
right?
and we were going to do a moonshine, but when we got it all done, we kind of decided, you know what, we want our first product to be bourbon. We don't want to be that company.
Yeah.
We're bourbon.
Yep.
We're bourbon. And that's what we're going to do. And we had these conversations. So we just tabled it.
America, right? Bourbon.
America. So we tabled it. Well, really kind of forgot about it.
You got some
And
busy.
so after Mitch had passed, Brother Mark he was not on to me, but said, hey, I want to get that moonshine out. And I was like, all right, but I was not finding any motivation to create a moonshine label.
Yeah.
There was zero motivation to do that. But in July of 22, I went to Alaska and came back and got COVID. So I know. So I'm at the house. I'm at the house for a week. And my COVID experience.
Your quarantine.
My COVID experience was not bad. All right.
Oof, mine was.
So I'm at the Paxlovid was out, and I got on it pretty quick, but I was at the house for a week, and I was like, all right. So I come down here one night when everybody was going to the office and grabbed up Mitch's files. And one thing about Mitch, he was meticulous, and he left a breadcrumb trail of his TTB logins and all that. And I'm like, you know what? I'll use this as a time to dig into the TTB process and learn that and understand it and figure it out, because I want to launch this bottle and bond, and so I need to learn it. And I log in, I find his deal and log into the TTB, and it was I'm in there just kind of looking through the website. And I see the labels that we had made, because we had already launched our bourbons and our vodkas and had those labels. And in the TTB website, they're archived and stored there. All of a sudden, this moonshine label is sitting there. TTB approved, ready to go.
This one right here?
That one right there.
Okay.
That one right there you're looking at.
So it was already like ready.
And so if you look at that label
sealed.
and you do look at and some of the reading on the back of it, the story and all, we wrote that. I remember the night Mitch and I wrote that.
Oh, y'all wrote it together?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a piece of history for
Oh,
you.
yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
nostalgia,
And then you take that and you look at our label and pay attention to our label. I'm just going to read it to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So on the front of the label, and this is what a lot of people don't really read.
Well, if you're a bourbon nerd, you do.
Yeah, it says.
I'm reading labels all the time when I go in liquor stores.
100%.
If you're a bourbon guy, you got to learn how to read production statements on labels.
Yeah.
You're
Tells
just going to end up with a
exactly
bunch of
what you're going.
you're going to end up with a bunch of MGP.
It's like, you're going to pay $50 more.
Notice our production statement: distilled, aged, and bottled by Hochatown Distilling.
Yeah.
All right. But the front of the label, it says our our straight bourbon whiskey is handcrafted from making with the finest corn, rye, and barley through fermenting, aging, and bottling. Every part of the process is done on site by hand. And so that label popped up, and I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. So I right-clicked on it, and it said, save as a JPEG.
Yes, please.
So I saved that as a JPEG, front and back label, and sent it to our label maker and started that process. And there was even a 375 ml that you see now that we have is the corn whiskey moonshine that label was in there also.
Really
we just released that. That's a tourist thing.
Yeah,
but it is a 90 proof. It's a tourist, cool. But it's pretty cool. You know, it's fun. So
it's got a little jug handle here. You can like chug it like old school.
Hey, let me tell you something. That right there.
You can hit somebody with it.
That's a weapon. That's a weapon right
that's
there.
That's a lethal weapon. That's assault, brother.
That's a weapon right there. All right, you can do it with that one. All right, that's a weapon.
And a lot of places try to like hide, that they source it anymore. It's like,
gosh, you gotta dig in.
Yeah, it's and that's kind of what turns me away from some things. It's
Didn't
like,
13th Colony get in some trouble? Like,
we're talking to our friend Randall, and he said that 13th Colony is supposedly like lying about some of their stuff. And
that's kind of come out.
I don't know what they're doing, but we our heritage series and stuff is all our stuff. And we're never going to run from that. We are what we are. We're going to be straight up front about it. Just to jump back over your question about our mash bill, how did we come up with it? We got sidetracked there.
Oh, it's okay. No, I mean, this is what we do here.
So we wanted balance in our flavor profile, and I think that's what you find when you drink our product and try our product is that you've got that sweetness that hits you on the front end, and that honey and that caramel. And you guys are empty. Where's that 32 at? Rod.
What is it about the 32?
These guys barrel 32. It's a single barrel. And you're going to see exactly what we're talking about. This thing popped out. We could smell it when it come out of the barrel.
And you're like, we need to put this back. Oh, okay. Yeah.
All right. 21-0032. All of our barrels are numbered on our single barrels.
Mine is.
Y'all try this one for a second.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, man.
We call it the bubblegum barrel.
I smell bubblegum, one of my favorite smelling notes. Bubblegum and butterscotch are like my two favorites, like notes.
This is really good. Golly.
Oh my God. This is good.
Yeah, I'm sure it's really exciting when you go through and you're trying these barrels, and then you're like, oh my God, this is one that we're going to single barrel. Like,
Rod's my guy. Well, he's my tasting guy right there. Rod and I do all the tasting on the
great.
barrels.
I hope Buffalo Trace doesn't sue me, but this tastes like one of the better blends I've had.
You can take our bottle in bond and put it up next to Colonel Taylor bottle in bond.
Yeah,
we'll hold right up there with it. Yeah, there's that to me. To me, Colonel Taylor is the gold standard for bottle and bond, and you can put our bottle and bond up next to it, and it's.
We might have to do that.
Yeah, we could make that happen. I've got some Colonel Taylor back there in the office, and I want
challenge accepted.
I want you guys to try it. Rod, if you get a chance in my office there is some Colonel Taylor there.
Oh, no, it's happening.
So back to the balance and the flavor. We wanted to really get a good balance, get that sweetness, and have a 80% corn to have a good corn whiskey out of it, if we wanted to, and just we knew what we wanted, and we fortunately had the education and the experience and to reverse engineer into it. And
I think
that's what you find.
Yeah, I think having a chemistry background and stuff.
It's helped tremendously.
And you got to realize when we started on this journey, if you're a winemaker, if you're a beer maker, you mess it up. All right, it's a 3-month setback.
Yeah, bourbon is like 4, 5, 10
3 years.
Yeah, well,
and most of the time on a 3-year deal is. The economics are not there to start over.
Yeah.
You got 3 years invested in it, and so you've got one shot to get it right, to get your flavor profile,
absolutely,
to get your terroir. Again, we're back to that word.
Yeah,
to get it right, to get what you are. You are what you are, nothing less, nothing more. And so, and then you hope that the public accepts what you are. And I think that we've done a really good job of creating a product that is unique in the market, that's good.
Yes.
That is not an imitator of anything. We are what we are.
Yeah.
That always kind of doesn't hurt me, but we get taters coming in here.
Not me. I'm not a tater.
Not my business partner tater. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all know what I'm talking about.
I know.
They're chasing them. They're chasing them MG people. I tell you what, that whole industry right there. If you think about it, it's a lot like the medical industry. You get the insiders and the publishers, you know, hyping these products, and then in turn they're buying advertising.
Yep.
And so it's kind of
it's the entire health industry.
It's almost like an incestuous process.
Take this supplement, you'll lose 20 pounds.
And I am so thankful that the bourbon nerd, the bourbon person that really is not just chasing bourbons, and I understand chasing it to try it, but that are appreciate bourbon, that have developed a palate and a taste for bourbon, that they understand what's going on there. And I'm glad you guys are here because...
Thank you for sharing.
Because,
so I'm going to be honest with you. Like when I first came and tried your bourbon, I was like, it's very corn forward. I think it was very youthful. But after kind of revisiting it, trying the OSU Loyal and True, like the two that you've shared with me, like I am very excited about what you guys are doing. I'm very excited. I'm want to run back, and we have, we're trying to build our community as well and say, hey, go try these guys. One, you're being real, you're being transparent, and you're making a pretty darn good product. And this is proof right here.
Yeah, well, thank you. So, we released our first bourbon and we were 2.5 years aged. And it was corn forward. It wasn't quite ready, but we had to get something out. We had been 4 years sinking money into this thing.
Yeah, well,
so we had to start, and we were anxious, and I don't regret it. I know Mitch was like, hold off. We gotta wait. It's not ready. It's not ready. And
please bottle this. This is so good.
And that's why I was telling you about how as we've matured and aging out our product and doing a selection of barrels of different as our barrels aged out and balancing those flavors. And hey, one day everything's going to be 4 years old. I'd love to get to that point. And it's a while away.
The evolution, you can see it.
But we got to get to where we can make more bourbon. Which is going to take building a bigger distillery, which is going to take
a lot of money.
Getting some financing in here and some money in here and doing those. You gotta balance that without selling your soul.
Yeah. Please. And, that's
so. But you're starting. Now you got an idea of our mash bill. I hope you noticed though that it's a very balanced flavor profile.
Oh yeah, it's very balanced.
It's very sweep up front, and I was definitely getting the rye spice on the back.
Yeah, but there's no harshness. There's no Sharpie. No bite. It's like, if you're going to define your distillery, it is balanced. And I think that is you're consistent and you're balanced, and that's a lot. That's a great thing to be hitting on a consistent level.
I'll tell you, I'll give you a little story here about how the importance of the barrel really clicked in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Was that when we do our barrel harvest, and I'll get a barrel that's a single barrel or something that kind of has a little more caramel in it, or something that's a unique thing about it, I'll pull that barrel aside, and we single barrel it, and then we'll hold that barrel in. My wife just around the corner here has a winery, Knotted Rope Winery.
Okay. Oh, okay, cool.
All right, and she's a little boutique winery. She sells everything she can make right there. Doesn't really distribute. They've got some great equipment. Their equipment was the old bench equipment, kind of the concept equipment for Mountain Fork Brewing, and then when they expanded up into bigger equipment, she went in and took that space over and used their fermenters, and she buys good juice out of Lodi, and then just really concentrates on making a really good wine. Well, she makes a Cab Franc, which is an old vine, which is the Cab Sauvignon is a cross between a Cab Franc and a Sauvignon Blanc, and so it's an old vine. You don't see it a lot in a bottle, but she makes it. And
I love a good Cab.
Well, and this Cab Franc, it doesn't have the acidity of a Cabernet Sauvignon, but then again, it doesn't have the kind of the blasé of a Merlot.
Yeah.
All right. So, not knocking Merlots, but there's
I'm not the biggest Merlot
but it's somewhere
fan.
in the middle.
Yeah,
It's somewhere in the middle.
What you want. That's why you drink Cab.
And so, and it's an old vine, but she will pull those barrels and we'll barrel age them in there. Guys, y'all are drinking. I'm talking a lot though. So,
No, you're good. We're drinking and talking.
I can't keep up with y'all doing this. So
we're used to doing this.
Yeah, this is what we do.
I'm talking a lot. All right,
That's fine.
y'all caught me on a good afternoon.
I'm
all
glad,
right?
man. This is fun. I hope you're enjoying
You're probably
yourself.
the first podcast to really get this in depth of the story.
That's
all
great.
right,
Hey, no,
Exclusive
we appreciate
of
it.
Hochatown.
and I've been waiting for the right people to hear that want to that can understand.
Cheers,
this because
we got to cheers to that. This is.
it's been raw emotionally.
Yeah, no, I can imagine what you've gone through, but to keep the dream alive and keep pursuing through, like I have all the respect in the world for what you're doing, and couldn't imagine what you've been through over the last few years. So, I mean, your brother would be proud of you,
Yeah,
and
well,
I
thank
don't
you.
say that lightly at all.
So that's Colonel Taylor right there.
E.H. Taylor, yeah, for you taters. I was like, Buffalo Trace, delicious cherry.
What I want to do, let me grab some. I want y'all to side by side taste these. All right,
Okay.
we'll talk. Don't drink it all that fast.
I just took a little sip.
When Rod gets in here, I want y'all to side by side
Yeah,
these.
for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
While we're waiting, do you have anything else to add to that? Because I was going to ask you, like, outside of Hochatown products, what are some of your like non-tater bottles? Like, what are some of your go-tos that you like that are just regular day bourbons?
Oh, outside of our products,
Yeah,
I love Elmer T. Lee.
Okay. You do it with the
that's
Sprite.
not a
like you
regular.
like?
That's not a everyday product.
No,
though.
no, it's not.
But that's
when I
good.
get-
That's like
people,
old fashioned.
people often. I'll give you something here, and I get a lot of questions. People go, "What's your bourbon taste like?"
Yeah,
How do you ask somebody what your bourbon, tastes like, or what's your favorite bourbon? You know, and I'm like,
I know.
what's your favorite child? You know,
For
That's
sure.
true.
Uh,
that
well,
is the most accurate statement anyone could say.
and you know what my favorite bourbon is?
What?
The one that I'm having in my hand
Right now, yeah.
right now. Yeah,
I don't know that barrel you let us try.
I'll tell you.
dude. Like
That-
So
Look how
being a
is.
20-year salesperson before I started all this, people go, "What's your bourbon taste like?" And I got, I thought, all right, I'm gonna come up with a smart aleck answer for
Yeah.
that. So let me see if I can do this. It took me a while to get it to where I could say it, but I'll say it right now. And they go, "So what's your bourbon taste like?" And I go, "Well, it's a bourbon made by bourbon drinkers who like to drink bourbon made by bourbon drinkers who make bourbon."
bourbon.
Think I can say that twice?
Yeah.
It's a bourbon made by bourbon drinkers who like to make bourbon made by bourbon makers who drink bourbon.
That's pretty
Dude,
good.
that's pretty awesome. You heard it first from Blue.
People kind of look at you like, what?
She sells seashores by the seashore.
It took me 2 weeks to get to where I could say
he's
that.
been practicing
Lock that into
You didn't even know he was going to be on the
memory, all
podcast
right?
today. Yeah, so this is a treat.
So,
That's great.
oh gosh, I forget where were we at? You had a question.
I asked you about like your everyday, like what is your
everyday
go-to
bourbon.
bourbon? Not your Elmer T.
Yeah.
Lee's. That's a tough one to find.
when Mitch and I started, we were drinking a lot of Elisha Craig.
Okay. Sort of small batch?
It was small batch, and it was 12 year. It was the 12-year in the old style.
the barrel proof?
No, it was just a 12-year small
okay.
batch in the old. It was the old style bottle, before they changed it.
Yeah.
And one day, Mitch and I were like, "Mitch, this just isn't hitting the way it used to. What do you think?" And then we got to kind of looking, and they had changed it from a 12-year-old to like an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
They'd started blending. So we're like, all right, we got to find another bourbon to drink. So then we migrated over and we're going back to 15, 16, 17. And we migrated over into Eagle Rare. All right,
Oh, God, I love
And
Eagle
it was
Rare.
before the Eagle Rare people got on. We were buying 10-year Eagle Rare for $29 a bottle,
Man, if only we could go back a little bit.
I know.
So we were drinking Eagle Rare, and we loved that. And then it got to where you couldn't get Eagle Rare. We'd
Yep.
find little Blantons, and so we dealt with that, and then we moved over into some Basil Hayden.
Okay.
And probably at the point when we did our mash bill, we were drinking Basil Hayden pretty regular then, and that's a Basil Hayden mash bill, by the way. Old Granddad Basil Hayden.
Okay. Yeah, I love it. Granddad 114.
Yeah, and I'm still amazed at Basil Hayden. It's an 80 proof bourbon, at how they can get such a rich, complex flavor out of an 80 proof bourbon, like they do.
Yeah,
So,
compared for an
compliments
80
to
proof
them.
bourbon. Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably the gold standard of 80 proof
You don't
bourbons.
see 80 proof bourbons out there.
No.
You don't really, no.
No, but so we're a Basil Hayden inspired mash bill. If our mash bill is what is to answer that question, is that's your answer there.
Okay.
Is it give us balance in our
Yeah.
flavor profile. So we're jumping all around, but I'll jump back over to when my wife has that winery over there in Barrel. And so
before you say that, I'm going to say your products are better than Basil Hayden. I'm going to go on record.
I agree.
I'm going to go on record to say that.
You know what? I'll agree with you.
I made
an
offensive Basil Hayden comment a couple episodes ago. So.
Well, all right, I won't disagree. I won't say we're better than anybody. Our whole goal all along here was...
I'm saying it right now. They're better than Basil Hayden.
Our goal was to stand shoulder to shoulder. Hey, Rod, would you grab us another glass? I want to do a side-by-side with this bottle with our bottle and bond and the Colonel Taylor, if you don't mind. So our goal was not to be better than, but to be, if we can stand up shoulder to shoulder and be right there with the big boys that's been doing this for 150 years. To me, that's what I'm most proud of, is that I get people all the time coming in here, and I'll set it at our little speakeasy in here, and I'll plug our speakeasy. If you come to Hochatown, you come to Hochatown Distilling. Be sure you take the tour with Rod.
Oh, we've already done it. It's phenomenal.
Come into the back.
5-star review.
We get so many compliments that Rod's tour is better than any tour from Kentucky they've ever.
I don't ever want to tour with anyone else but Rod if I ever come here.
Rod will have to come with us to Kentucky, and he'll just take over the tour.
You should.
I'm telling you, it's crazy.
We need to arrange that. Rod's gonna come with us and get us.
We're very fortunate in that. So have you got that ready? I got them ready. Yeah, bring them up. Let's. I want y'all to.
Right. We're gonna
in
do
the left hand.
side.
In the left hand, you're gonna have what I consider the gold standard for a bottle and bond.
Yeah, I would
and
not.
It's fair. It's because E.H. Taylor started the bottle and bond.
Yeah, and then in your right. Well, E.H. Taylor petitioned Congress in the Bottle and Bond Act of 1897.
Yeah, they did. Actually, Bottle and Bond Day is coming up in March, right?
So
March 3rd.
March 3rd. Yeah, we're gonna do a Bottle and Bond episode.
So after we try this, I'm gonna give y'all. Because I get that question asked a lot about what's bottle and bond, so I'm going to give you my canned answer, okay?
I'd love to hear it, yeah.
Left hand, E.H. Taylor.
Yep.
Right hand, Hochatown Distilling.
Okay. The only difference is it's more corn forward.
A little more corn forward. Yeah,
but they're both very good.
They use a little higher rye content.
Yeah, you can tell.
And
I love rye.
In the E.H. Taylor has, they don't say, but I think it's around a 15% rye, where we're a 10% rye.
Yeah, they try to hide their mash bills.
Yeah, I don't know why.
And then we make up the balance of that difference with corn. So, so bottle and bond, you were talking about that, and I get a lot of people asking about bottle and bond, and a lot of people don't understand bottle and bond, and they'll go, well, why do you make a bottle and bond? And I'm like, because we can. The bottle and bond label is the only label that requires the DSP number, the distilled spirits plant number, to be on the bottle. If you look at one of our bottle and bond bottles, where's one at? You'll notice on this bottle, on the back of it, it has the DSP number right there, the distilled spirits plant.
Yeah, what I'll give you too is on this, your finish is better than the E.H. Taylor.
I get that a lot.
Yeah,
I get that compliment right there.
I'm not being a homer, guys. This is my honest opinion because. Yeah.
I think a little bit less in that rye content. It doesn't hit quite as hard.
Yeah, probably.
It's probably maybe on that. Yeah. But when people go, why do you do a bottle and bond? And I said, because we can. Because when you're sourcing and the requirements, you have your DSP on there, you can't do this. So because we make it, this is Oklahoma's first and only bottle and bond.
I've always enjoyed the first time I tried your bottle and bond. That was my favorite out of the group.
Yeah. So in 1897, Colonel Taylor petitioned Congress to create the Bottle and Bond Act, and you can have bottle and bond whiskey, you can have bottle and bond bourbon, you can even have a bottle and bond vodka. All right, you'd have to wax line your barrel, but and store it 4 years. I don't know why you'd do that, but you could have a bottle and bond if it's made by the standard.
That could be interesting.
So the Bottle and Bond Act of 1897, you got to realize this predated food safety laws.
Oh, that's good.
All right. So bourbon leads the way. We can go all the way back to the Whiskey Rebellion, all the way through. Right. Bourbon leads the way.
Nobody knows. Not many people know that bourbon influenced the Industrial Revolution. It paid for the wars that we did. I mean, it literally is a part of our history, and it's crazy how it kind of is like the step. Yeah, America. It's a stepchild of it's okay, alcohol or whatever else, but we would not be where we are at today if it was not for whiskey. And that's the truth. You look it up in the history books, whatever you want to say, and bourbon's a part of our culture.
Absolutely,
who we are.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons we chose to make bourbon, because
Amen.
we wanted to embrace our culture, and we had a great place here. So the Bottle and Bond Act of 1897, Colonel Taylor petitioned Congress, and at that time, you would have, they'd make this beautiful liquor. And by the time it went through the jobbers or the middlemen, they call them distributors these days, they were adding stuff to it and all, and it was becoming adulterated, and it just didn't taste like what they intended it to taste. So the Bottle and Bond Act created a standard by which bourbon was made, or a whiskey, if it's made to a whiskey standard or whatever, a rye, you could do a rye. And that standard is that it was made in the same season. It was aged in government bonded warehouses.
Yep.
Meaning the government agents actually had the keys to the warehouses those days, so it kept them from swapping out, doing things to it. It was aged a minimum of 4 years, and it was at 100 proof, which is proof liquor. And so when you bought that tax stamp on a bottle and bond, you knew there was a certain level of assurance and quality to that product. So bottle and bond, that's what the Bottle and Bond Act is. That's one of the reasons why Mitch and I really was real proud to be able to get it to the point to where we created and had a Bottle and Bond Act.
And I really haven't had many bad bottled and bonds. It turns out, they end up being very good.
I think in your bourbon journey of drinking, you start with, I always call the weeded bourbons, Maker's Mark. Some of them, that's a gateway bourbon.
Yeah, that's a gateway bourbon.
You're like drinking beer. You're like, I got to clean my drinking up a little bit. Yeah. So you move over into the maybe Makers and Coke, and then you're like, I need to get away from that sugar. Yeah. I'll drink Makers, and then you're like, I want to try something with a little more punch. So you get over in the bourbons, the ryes. Yeah. You move through higher rye bourbons and higher proof rye bourbons, and you eventually wind up over there just into the rye whiskeys, for a little while. And then you kind of rebound back over into the bourbons, and I kind of see where I've settled, and I think that's kind of where a lot of people have settled, is that Bottle and Bond 100 proof. It's a balance of proof, of flavor, of just everything that comes together and everything that's magical and delicious.
God bless America right there.
So.
Yeah. Question for you real quick off. What is your favorite rye?
Oh, the Russell ryes are just
really?
anything Jimmy Russell makes.
I love all. We're turkey guys. Gobble gobble.
I mean, come on. To me, everybody gets all crazy about Sazerac and all that, Buffalo Trace, and they're great products. But man, when it comes to the turkeys and the Russell family and what they do, that's the gold standard for bourbons. I mean, that whole family and what they do is that Knob Creek 110 is just kicks ass.
I love Knob Creek. I am a Knob Creek. I will preach to the top of the mountain. I'm a Knob Creek connoisseur. I love Knob Creek. Knob Creek 12 is one of my absolute favorites. Like go-tos, like on a shelf, like they'd sell out all the time. But if you're gonna get a bourbon, it tastes like Snickers to me. Like I love Knob Creek 12.
Yeah. So segueing back over in again about that. My wife has that winery, and I don't want to keep jumping on it, but it's when the light come on.
What winery?
Me.
I don't remember talking about.
Not a Rope Winery, but I'm not plugging it. But I am. But to me, this was a revelation, really. So we picked these barrels that these single barrels, and I sent it over, and she does that Cab Franc in there, and I'm drinking one of her Cab Francs, and I'm like, I told my wife, I said, look, I'm not trying to be like a homer here, but this reminds me very much of a Silver Oak wine.
All right. So Silver Oak and Cayman.
I love Silver Oak.
I'm a Cayman guy.
Right,
but I love Silver Oak too.
And I didn't know why.
Yeah.
But within a few months, after the barrel maker we were using, Barrel 53, burned, and I couldn't get barrels, but I knew there was a cooperage across the road from them. Mm-hmm. So my wife and I loaded up, and I said, we're driving up there, and I'm going to go to that cooperage, and I'm going to figure out what I got to do to get
get some barrels.
And I took a couple of cases of liquor with me.
Yeah.
And so we went up there, and that cooperage had burned, Barrel 53. And so we drove over to the cooperage, to the Oaks cooperage. And she goes, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to go make a friend. I met Shauna at the front and told her and talked to her, and she wound up getting me by. I made a friend,
Yeah.
But I find out that the Oaks Cooperage is owned And now the Oaks Cooperage sources, and I knew the Oaks Cooperage sourced their wood from the same region, the same area where Barrel 53 got theirs from my contact that I talked about earlier over in Hot Springs, Jay Gibbs, Mr. Gibbs Brothers Cooperage. And so I come to find out that the Oaks Cooperage is owned by Silver Oak Wines.
Really?
So I'm like,
that's interesting.
All right, and
they
sell some. They sell some to a few of their little bit of their product over to bourbon barrels.
Yeah.
So that's when the light bulb went off to me of how important the wood is to your product that you're making. Instead of trying to source whatever's available and from wherever and all that and getting all the different things, is to get a wood that's from a specific region that gives us our flavor. And so that's why I'm very particular about how and where we source our wood barrels from
quality product
from the oaks, because I know that part of that flavor profile that you get from us and you taste in our bourbons, back to that word again, the terroir of that is that it comes in and is imparted from the wood grain density from grown in that region.
Yeah.
And how far north it's grown, and then just the flavor profile that comes through and expresses itself out in the bourbon.
Yeah, so Bardstown just came out not too long. Well, maybe 3 or 4 months ago. They came out with a Silver Oak collab, so I haven't got to try it yet.
See, I'm telling you, I'm always way in front of them. We were making our old fashions out of the Luxardo cherries way before Woodford or somebody come out with theirs.
Everybody's doing it.
So, they're the big boys, but, that's good to know, though. We're on the forefront of all that. We've been in front of a lot of those things.
You should be proud about that.
Have you put some of your bourbon into those wine barrels that she has?
We have not yet. I've been kind of stingy with my bourbon, but she does have barrel 32, the one that we were trying, that bubblegum barrel.
Oh God, I love that one.
She does have that barrel over in her place with some Cab Franc aging in it right in it right now.
Let us know when that thing's ready.
So I am waiting for that to finish out.
Excellent.
And then we'll probably take one of our 4-year-old bourbons, so it'll be a non-age statement, and then we'll slip it over into that one and let it age, and then see what we come up with.
I bet it'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah,
so that's great. I mean, by itself, it's so good. I mean, I'm a big fan of that one. Thank you for letting us try that. So we're going to close this out. Do you have any final thoughts or anything you want to share with our audience? I mean, we've talked about a lot of different topics. You definitely got a good, just overall understanding of what you guys are about, what you're coming out with. We're very thankful to get to try some of the things you shared with us. But what are some final thoughts you want to share with our audience?
Well, some final thoughts are, and we didn't even get into this subject. This is probably another subject for another day.
Have to come back and do this again.
We just kind of touched on liquor laws and how they, and being a small distiller in Oklahoma, we've got some very challenging issues in front of us to grow our brand and our industry, and those issues are really wrapped around protectionism, and it's not protecting Oklahoma distillers. It's about protecting out-of-state corporations that make it very difficult for us to do our business and pigeonhole us and lock us into different things. We can talk about that. We're working on some things right now to break some of those chains that bind us.
Yeah, well, let's look at doing a follop episode, and we can talk more about that, because I think it's important to understand.
And I think after this legislative session, we'll jump into some of that, and there's a whole story that we haven't even touched on behind the getting our product passed through legislation and opening the channel for Oklahoma distilleries where you can go there and actually buy a glass and buy a bottle at the distillery, which is the lifeblood for a distillery to be able to function, is that the early days of being able to do that. And Mitch and I were able to successfully navigate that and get that turned and change the dynamics of distilling in Oklahoma, because we're a great state in Oklahoma. We've got tourists. We've got tourism. We've got the potential to make great products. Mm-hmm. We've just got to keep out-of-state interest from keeping that from happening. If we want to grow Oklahoma, put Oklahoma bourbon on the map, make Oklahoma bourbon great. We can't make it great again, but we can make Oklahoma bourbon great.
Yes, we can.
it's been a long time coming for me to do a podcast like this.
Yeah.
And I didn't see this coming when we sat down here.
Hey, that's the best.
I didn't see it coming.
You can't plan for this stuff. That's what,
I know.
This is gold right here.
I mean,
like what we've done today and trying some bourbons, talking about, we got a little emotional, but this is why we live in the bourbon community. This is what we love to do.
I really want to thank you guys for coming out, and I'm glad y'all were here to be able to catch some of this. And sometimes in this whole bourbon journey and process that I've been on, Mitch and I always said that throughout this whole process that let's not get too caught up in seeking out necessarily those people, but those people will come along when the timing is right. And I think once again it's proven that the timing was right.
Yeah,
you all come along, so thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been so special to us. I will. This will go for us forever. I mean, thank you so much for opening up with us, talking with us. Thank you for sharing your amazing whiskey, some of the things that you have coming up. And if any of our listeners are listening right now, Hochatown is here to stay. They're fighting a good fight, and we will do anything we can to help you guys continue to power through. So thank you guys. That's it. That's all I got to say. And I'm Cody.
I'm Garrett.
And we are the Bourbon Nerds. Thank you guys.